Oh, you're always here.
I never leave.
How are you?
Tired.
Tired, really, yeah.
But that's probably not what the people want to hear. No. So I'm actually hungry, ready to go, and I'm ready for some food and some grub.
Yeah? So, if there was one dish which was a hug, no, if there's one dish that was a cuddle, this would be it. Bene.
Tutto bene. So what is this, James? What am I eating?
This, I described before, it's a cuddle in a bowl of food, but this is a sausage pasta. Similar to a bolognese, but you cook it like a curry.
How so?
In that, you start by browning an onion, garlic, and then you actually season this with a tiny bit of cumin, fennel, thyme, rosemary, get all of these oregano, all of these like wintry warm herbs, about half a glass of red wine, fry that off. Tomato puree, you fry off a really nice seasoned sausage. You don't want to sort of bang as a mash style. You want to sort of packed with pepper and onion and garlic sausage. Yeah. Fry that off till you get a light little crust. Add a can of chopped tomatoes. Just let that reduce, and then you coat it with Parmesan just as you're serving it with a bit of that starchy water, and it's just perfect. Fill you up, warm you up. It's a farmer's dinner.
Is there an official name for this? It's just called a sausage pasta?
It's just called the sausage pasta. It's similar to a bolognese, but I think a bolognese takes up to 2 hours to get it really good. This you can do in half an hour.
What's the name of the pasta itself?
This is rigatoni.
Rigatoni.
Spaghetti
right.
would get lost in this dish because you've got big lumps of sausage and tomato. So rigatoni is thick, chewy pasta with ridged edges, and that's going to be big enough to carry the sauce.
So when did you start making this?
I only recently learned this dish. I want to say the end of last year.
I meant this evening, but...
honestly, about 30, 40 minutes ago. This is the busy man's bolognese.
Oh, the busy... I like that. The busy man's bolognese.
The busy man's bolognese.
I
love a bolognese. You're going to do carrot and celery and brown off some mint. But if you just want a quick, you want the big flavour, that red wine style sausage pasta.
Where did you get the meat from?
M&S.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, I really like it. I'm getting that heartiness and getting that flavour. It's warm, and I just, you've made it look bloody lovely.
It's just so much cheese. It's so naughty.
Yeah, but not as much cheese as when you did the cacio e pepe.
Well, no, that is like a posh mac and cheese, actually.
There really is.
Yeah.
This is...
You just get like fennel seeds in there, cumin, thyme, oregano, and it just starts tasting like a country herb garden.
You know what I feel like? I feel like you've seen Goodfellas, right?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, I feel like that scene. You remember when Joe Pesci has lost it at the bar and he's like whacked that guy, and they go bury. But before they go, dig the hole, they stop off at like his mum's place.
Yes.
And the mum makes them that full Italian meal. And it's Martin Scorsese's mother who plays the...
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, that's lovely.
And they're all dining, they've got the red wine, they've got the bread, and they're all probably like, oh, this is fantastic. And meanwhile in the trunk, it just zooms in on the car outside the kitchen window.
This is the food you make for your son who's in the mafia, but you don't want to think about it. But all of his friends who are also lovely Italian boys come over, and you go, look, I'm going to make these good boys a nice, hearty sausage pasta.
He's had a long, hard day shooting people, garroting people with wire.
And the mum kind of knows, but she doesn't want to think about it.
No.
And the secret ingredient is always love.
Our boy's a good boy.
Yeah, good boy.
Yeah, boy's a
Rub
good
on the
boy.
chin.
So, James, as we've discussed, it is Oscar season. We've been slowly but surely trying to get ourselves through the films that are out. But the thing is about Oscar season that I always find quite wearying is that the films are actually increasingly disposable. And what I mean by that is, I found over the past few years, there are just films that just seem to come out and exist purely to be in the awards circuit. And after the Oscar season is...
from a mile away.
Exactly. And then as soon as the Oscar season's over, they drop like a stone. I don't necessarily mean Oscar bait. That's kind of different. That's like, I desperately want to be nominated. There are probably films that are perfectly fine in their own right, but I mean, they just sort of offer nothing than being kind of grand. And then they have no cultural relevance other than just being nominated.
Yeah.
They don't exist. And obviously, look, it's hard for a film to know how culture is going to react. We're not saying that every film has to be a classic and has to stay with people's memories. But last year, I know it was affected by the pandemic, but I couldn't think of many films that really stayed with me. I mean, take a film like Minari, right? Never saw it, but also no one ever mentions it again.
Yeah, it's just disappeared.
And Oscar history is littered with films that have just come up and then
They
disappeared.
strike. They come out at the perfect time for critics and award shows to go. Ooh,
Yeah,
but
and do you know
then
what
no one-
comes to my mind is there was a film that came out. I think it was the first Oscar season I ever remember being aware of when I was a kid. I was probably about 9. And the big film that year that everyone was talking about and that I have heard absolutely no one mention in about 10 years is Cold Mountain. Right? With Jude Law and Renee Zellweger and Nicole Kidman.
I mean, it has a sense of award scale to it.
Oh my
but
God. And that year I watched
I
all
don't even
like,
see it on TV.
no one talks about it. It's almost
No.
like it doesn't exist. It's like it existed in Stalin's Russia and it got wiped
you know
out.
what? You know why you haven't heard of Cold Mountain in a while? It's the death of HMV.
Right.
Because that would have been, you would have seen the DVD and gone,
Yeah.
Cold Mountain. But there is no shop front to walk through and browse. We have the shop fronts of the streamers, but they're not the same as going through, or like the Dixons in the airport to look at all the DVDs for a holiday.
I bet you if that film came up on a Netflix streaming service, people would be like, Cold Mountain? What is that? I still, there are other films that don't, Gladiator, even Master and Commander,
It's
but
like a Beautiful Mind with Russell Crowe.
well, I still think that won Best Picture. I mean,
did,
I'm more aware of Beautiful Mind because that's based on a real, but anyway, I digress. The reason I bring this
what am
up,
I going to be completely unaware
the
of?
thing I bring this up is for that reason. I thought we could have a little game.
Yeah.
Because Oscar films are so disposable, and we're approaching the 2022 Oscars. Let's rewind 10 years.
Okay.
And you and I both watch a lot of films. So really 10 years ago is quite recent in our film watching experience.
Fine, yeah.
We were still on the cusp of adulthood then. And I want to I'm going to throw out...
Straight up, if this was the other way around, you would have a pretty encyclopedic knowledge of what films were nominated, won,
Hang
were
on.
in the conversation. I really, for the life of me, can't think of... I could guess, but I really don't know what films were out. But you're going to...
So here's the game. I'm going to just run through
Okay.
all of the films that were nominated
For Best Picture.
For Best Picture that
Yeah.
year. And I just want to get your thoughts,
Okay.
get your reaction, see if you remember them, and I'm going to build up to the film that actually won Best Picture that year.
Okay,
So
all
this
right.
is 2022.
Yeah, I mean 2012.
Yeah, I do mean 2012, sorry. So this is 2012,
The year that it was meant to all end.
and these are nominating films that were released in 2011. Off the bat, do you have any guesses at what films were up for Oscars that year? I'm going to tell you how many nominees there were. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There are 9 films.
I am thinking it's 2012. So these are films that came out in 2011. Or is
Correct.
it not? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's how
yeah,
it works.
that's how it works.
I'm thinking this might have been... Is this the year... the Artist, which I haven't seen? Is that it? Okay.
Correct. I mean, you kind of turned the game on its head because that was the winning picture.
Is that the
of
winning
year.
picture? Not seen The Artist.
You've not seen it.
No.
You didn't go see it at the time. You weren't
No,
interested in
didn't go
seeing
see
it.
it at the time. I think I would. It was, but I just never got around to it.
Well,
Is it good?
I've
Come on,
only,
Best Picture.
I saw it once 10 years ago in the cinema in awards season. Okay,
Oh,
it's,
do you remember? No one really talks about it now.
you know what it is? It would actually be better as just a short film. Because it's
Right.
made entirely as a silent movie, right? That was the whole thing about it. It's this French film made as a silent movie, and it recreates the Hollywood
dog.
Yeah, the dog's really good in
Yeah.
it. It's a great idea as a silent film. As a full-length picture, it's a bit like, I get it, it's very quiet. I get what you're doing. It's just a formal exercise. It can't really stretch to
Isn't
give
it
any
funny
heart.
that we went back to the old way we used to do it? Isn't that like the novelty? Oh, isn't it funny that we went back to the old way of doing films?
Well, the
silent?
self-referentiality.
Yeah.
Of it. And I think that's why Hollywood loved it, because Hollywood loves to, if you pardon the expression, peer up its own arse
Yeah.
and be like, oh, Hollywood, it's just such a, oh my God.
Remember what we were like back then?
And just sort of like hagiographic.
For me, I thought of that because I remember it for its Oscar buzz, which is why I think I remembered it. But that, for me, it could have been 2010 to 2012, 13. I wouldn't have been able to place it. It was a good guess.
I think that is a quintessential film that exists purely for Oscar buzz, has no wider resonance other than really filmy people loving it because it's a film and it's about film and blah blah blah. Okay. Shall I give you some?
Yeah, give me some.
The Descendants.
Seen The Descendants. I like The Descendants. George Clooney, Shailene Woodley.
Her big break.
Was that her big break?
Yep.
Another kid in it who I can't remember. I remember enjoying The Descendants. I've probably not thought about the film since probably a couple of years after it came out, where I would have watched it on Sky and enjoyed it.
Well, maybe I should just to clarify to people, The Descendants. It's that film in Hawaii, where
Yes.
George Clooney's looking over his shoulder. The mother of his children is injured in a jet skiing accident at the very beginning. She's in a coma, and he's like looking after their 3 children. One who's a teenager, Shailene Woodley. Then there's like sort of one who's about, I think, 11. Then there's one who's probably about 7. And the whole thing is it's set in Hawaii. It's like paradise, but actually it's very sad. It's about midlife crisis. And it's directed by
Shows the
Alexander.
sort of dusty underside of Hawaii that you never really see in Hollywood.
And it's directed by Alexander Payne, who's a really good director. Does very similar things about taking like an something quintessentially American and looking at the strange underbelly. So like he did Election, which is about have you ever seen Election?
No.
Oh, got to add that to the list.
Okay,
that's a great. So that looked at high school election dynamics, and then there's like About Schmidt, which is about like retired, Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the sense, and that's the gist of it. But
Yeah.
you were saying you had kind of fond memories of it.
I remember enjoying The Descendants. Yeah, I thought it was pretty different. Again, I like the fact that it subverted your traditional impression of what Hawaii was, and it never really been portrayed to me in that way. Wasn't it about he was going to dissolve some sort of foundation? What was the decision he had to come to? Because she was going to...
I think it was something to do with the money.
The money, yeah.
With the mother. But again, I've only seen it.
I'm really clutching at straws. But I remember enjoying it. I really do like George Clooney. I wish he'd do more stuff that wasn't just the sort of smarmy Ocean's 11 stuff, because I think he's a very talented actor. But I don't think he's that interested in being on that. I think he's said he's not that interested on being on that side of the camera. He wants to produce and direct.
I think this was like his last roll of the dice at being like the serious stuff. I don't remember George Clooney doing like serious stuff.
He's shooting a series at the moment with Julia Roberts. Great to see them back together.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. But no, fond memories. I can't say I know it well, but I thought it was a good film.
I saw it one time at the cinema again during the Oscar buzz, and I remember towards the end there's a very, very emotional scene. Everyone in the cinema was very quiet, and the person in front of me finished their crisps and crunched up the packet and threw it down right in the middle of the scene. We were just like, are you serious?
Yeah. So he finds out his wife has been cheating on him, but she's in a
bit
coma.
of spoiler. Yeah. So that's the thing.
He's
Cheating with Matthew Lillard.
Yeah,
from Scooby Doo, and without
Shaggy.
a paddle.
And Oscar
and Scream. Yeah, and the Oscar goes to Matthew Lillard.
Jeepers,
Scoob. So that's the conflict. He finds out she's been cheating, which actually is in the trailer because there's the bit where he like runs.
It was that shot he's like running to the camera and
But
he's very
this is my
sweaty in
point.
the flip-flops.
Oscar season is just like drilled into you so much that all these films feel really recent, but this is actually 10 years ago. Okay, Moneyball.
Yes, Moneyball. Remind me who directed that.
It's a guy called Bennett Miller.
Bennett Miller
has only, as far as I'm aware, made 3 films. Capote with Philip Seymour Hoffman about Truman Capote. Moneyball with Brad Pitt and Jonah Hill and Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah.
And Foxcatcher with Steve Carell.
Yes, that was the
Channing
other one I was
Tatum,
thinking of.
And Mark
Foxcatcher's the
Ruffalo. And Bennett Miller, he's an interesting guy. And I remember when he did the interviews for Foxcatcher, I think that was a really difficult post-production for him. I think it really was. And it's a shame because I remember him doing a lot of interviews and being the director of the season, Foxcatcher being a real big awards of that year, 2014-15. And he hasn't made a film since, as far as I'm aware.
Do you remember when you were looking at my YouTube history and I weirdly had Foxcatcher workout puke scene on my history?
Yes, I do.
Because that film weirdly came up on my YouTube recommended. You know, sometimes you get like movie clips.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, Foxcatcher.
Yeah.
I've not thought about that film for ages, but I remember Steve Carell gives this really like out of the way performance for Steve Carell.
Yeah.
And it's all these
That was
prosthetic it was all about the prosthetic forehead nose.
Yeah, but it was also like welcome Steve Carell to being a serious actor.
Yes,
now, right?
comedy actor.
And George
making the
Clooney goes out,
transition.
Steve Carell comes in.
But Moneyball, I remember seeing. So it's got Chris Pratt in it.
Of course,
But
yeah.
I don't remember at all anything about it. Jonah Hill's this sort of like numbers guy.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like this very literally inside baseball thing where they go over every single statistic of all these players. And that is what's political about who goes in and who comes out.
I think it's about he finds a formula that instead of trying to find like the big like flash, number like 9 out of 10 players, you sort of go for the average 6 out of 10 players because on average they're more consistent. So a guy completely builds his team in a completely different way based on this algorithm that
that was it.
This number cruncher came up with. And Philip Seymour Hoffman plays the coach who's like really gruff, he's got like a flat top hair.
Yeah.
I've only seen it once. Aaron Sorkin did the script.
That's again why I was asking about the director, because I knew it was poking around those circles. Yeah.
I think I would like to rewatch it now. I'm older.
Yeah.
I think it's on Netflix.
I see that on Netflix. I see that floating around, but I never fancy watching it.
So that almost goes in the category of that of all the films we've mentioned so far, the one you'd probably be interested in rewatching. I don't think I would go back and rewatch The Descendants. I'm probably not going to rewatch The Artist. But I would happily rewatch Moneyball.
Yeah, fair.
Because Sorkin's still working, and yeah. Okay.
This is interesting.
Thank you.
Is it unfair to say it's a kind of vapory year? You know that intro you gave about.
There's
them
one
feeling-
film on here that I don't think you've seen that I think is great, and you know what? I'm not going to wait to tell you. I'm going to build up now. So this is a film that I hadn't seen for ages. I don't think you've seen.
Yeah.
And I was aware it's very polarizing. That some people think it's a load of absolute pretentious nonsense, and some people think it's just like pure cinema. And I finally watched it in lockdown, and I loved it because I was watching it and I thought, don't do this, kids. But I was like, I really wish I was high for this.
Right, okay.
That is Terrence Malick's The Tree of Life.
I have seen the
Oh, you have seen The Tree of Life?
I have seen The Tree of Life.
What did you think?
I mean, where to begin with The Tree of Life? The Tree of Life is one of those films that if you are to Google what is the best film of all time, for some reason, The Tree of Life comes up on a lot of lists as number one, which is what piqued my curiosity. Go on.
Well, I was going to say that's because it's got kind of like bumper sticker, kind of very broad title, The Tree of Life.
Yes.
Kind of that's one for all, and very philosophical. Anyway.
It is really. I think you know what? I think I remember it quite well. Again, not thought about it in a really long time, but it essentially it follows essentially since the dawn of time.
Yeah.
But it also follows this family at different stages of life, and Brad Pitt and Bryce Dallas Howard.
No, Jessica Chastain.
Jessica
Who always
Chastain.
gets
Shit.
confused. No, so Brad Pitt. No, it's actually Sean Penn.
How do you explain this movie?
Sean Penn is modern day architect, and he's depressed
in this very cold.
because I think
modern
his
era.
father has just died. But it's really not a plot film. You don't need to. Anyway, and he keeps getting these flashbacks as a result. No, it's about his brother. It's something about his brother. And he keeps getting this flashback to his childhood as a result.
Yeah.
In the 1950s with his very authoritarian father played by Brad Pitt.
Yes.
And his very angelic, loving mother played by Jessica Chastain.
It's all shot like the simple childhood, the tire hanging from the tree.
It's
playing.
just shot in images. It's the cinematographer is Emmanuel Lubetsky, who went on to do The Revenant. And just... For me, like some of the best cinematography
It is brilliant. And the way in which it instead of doing like scenes and plot, it's like memories that you would have that shape you.
Yes, it's
Like
incredibly...
your dad teaching you how to fight, a fight you had with a school bully.
It's incredibly sensorial, about sensory-based.
It's very classic Terrence Malick, like camera's going to float and go at Dutch angles and point up and then back down.
And it's going to catch the dappled light.
The dappled light through the trees and the sun flaring. And
the kind of... and cello noises
cut alongside long sequences with streams, lava, waterfalls, dinosaurs.
Yeah, the dawn of time, essentially.
Essentially the dawn of time. Was there a Big Bang sequence?
Yeah. That's like, so you've got this whole like neighborhood childhood 1950s thing, and then it cuts to literally the beginning of the universe.
Yeah.
The Big Bang. The
I'm
creation
like,
of
we're
the
going
thing,
there.
and then dinosaurs.
But I'm talking like a 90-second scene, which is a long time, of a dinosaur drinking water in a stream.
Yes.
Like, I could be longer, but it feels like a really long time.
And this is why some people think it's pretentious nonsense, because they're like, you're trying to show me like the origin of love, the origin of caring.
And it sort of culminates in this moment where Sean Penn is walking in this like salt desert and sees like his family once again found him, and it's this gorgeous like cinematic white. Like, you know what? If you're a fan of cinematography, you should really go see it. But in terms of the film, I mean, I don't even know how to even summarize it.
Love it or hate it, but that's a movie. Like when you say like that is a film. It's not even a movie. Like that is a film. I mean, that is a film. That is a proper cinematic.
As you can tell, you can't really talk about the plot.
You have to just see it.
And what it's about. It's you take in your eyes and you come out with an impression of life. It sounds so pretentious, but I can't think of a less pretentious way to describe it.
You just have to go with it. That's why I said about thinking about the drug taking. It's like it's just so completely heady and lofty, but has such conviction. That's what I like. It has such like, I'm gonna tell you this.
You won't come out with an impression of what you think of it. You'll probably come out with of how it made you feel.
It's very, very feeling.
And that will either really piss you off,
yes,
or you'll be like, I felt this and that was enough.
Yes, I totally agree. When I hear people being sniffy about it, I'm like, well, come on, guys, what more do you want? Come on.
You're there with your camera in the corner, floating around.
Imagine like it's like 2001, but with more of an emotional heart. I think there's some really sort of deep stuff in it about trauma when you're a child.
It's more emotion than 2001.
Yeah.
It's more like, come on, let's get the camera in. You know what I can imagine it was? I imagine, this might completely be made up, but Terrence Malick was like, to the actors, you guys just interact and we'll shoot around you. And they sort of had these like character moments or whatever they happened to do which felt right was what they used. It was less about, I'm going to direct you to do this. I don't think it was properly blocked to a T.
No.
I think it was.
Terrence Malick is obviously he's almost just completely cerebral in his own head, and like there's always an actor who doesn't.
He had a new one that came out that I wanted to see.
The thing is about Terrence Malick, this was the beginning of a new phase of Terrence Malick films. He made like 2 films in the 70s. They didn't make a film for like 28 years. Made The Thin Red Line.
That's so Terrence Malick.
And then he made like 2 other, maybe another film. Then he went off for 10 years. Then he made The Tree of Life. And then he's made
Knight of Cups.
Yeah, then he made all these films that Mark Kermode calls like, whispery perfume ads, which again are like, what do we do with those we love? And it's like
shot between the bed sheets.
Yeah, and there's like I think it's called To the Wonder and Song to Song, and they always have like great cast, but they look really pretentious. But I think The Tree of Life is something to hold on to, and definitely a standout for me. It's bold.
It's not something you could recommend to someone. And this again sounds really pretentious. Who doesn't like film? If you're someone who really does like films and something that's beautifully shot, lean them to watch it.
If I had one choice, because this is never going to get shown there, that's the film I want to see on the IMAX.
Oh yeah, it would be great to see on the big screen.
But that never gets reruns. Like that would be amazing to see on a huge screen.
Yeah, on a big screen. I agree.
And maybe a little bit high. Okay, moving on. Okay, to recap, we've had The Artist, we've had The Descendants, we've had Moneyball, we've had The Tree of Life. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 films left. Okay. Maybe even 5 actually. Okay.
Yeah.
So the next film, a film I bet you've almost probably never even heard of because. Right. And it was definitely the run to the litter of this year.
Okay.
When this film got released, it was nominated. People were like, that is the lowest reviewed, most poorly reviewed Best Picture nominee of all time.
Okay.
And that is a film called Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close.
Oh,
which is based on a book, and it was that story about a child who has a very broadly Asperger's, autistic. I know I'm saying that sounds quite clunky, but I say it in that kind of broad term because I think the film portrays it in such like a broad spectrum of he's got a thing. We're not interested in presenting what he has. He's just got a thing.
Right.
And it's set, and his mother is Sandra Bullock, and his father is Tom Hanks, and his father Tom Hanks is killed in the Twin Towers. And he then goes on this sort of fantastical, wonderful journey about meaning and discovering something.
Who plays?
Look, I'm going to say right now, I haven't seen it, but I remember seeing it.
I
don't remember who plays the kid. I know John Goodman's in it. I know Jeffrey Wright's in it, I believe. Okay. But it was one of the first, except for World Trade Center and United 93. Like this was one of the first. And it's the 9/11 film, and there was a lot of obviously impassioned feeling about it, and it came out on the 10-year anniversary.
Fine. Do you think it got a lot of attention because of the cast? Bullock and Hanks
It had a good cast, and obviously, the subject matter. But I think people found it, the subject matter, not the subject matter, the way that subject matter is interacted with the plot of this, child in this sort of fantastical. I think people found it very saccharine and very grating.
Yeah.
So there's a reason that you couldn't even remember that. I only know that film for that award season.
Fine.
For the discussions around about it. I've never ever heard anyone talk about it since. The next film is one I did rewatch recently.
Yep.
Midnight in Paris.
I've not seen Midnight in Paris.
Oh,
but
really?
I really need to see it. It's a real. It's on my list pile of shame.
But your blind spots.
Blind spots. That was it. Yeah.
Do you know what, James?
Talia likes it.
I have a bad feeling that I think you've missed the moment to watch Midnight in Paris.
It would be no good now.
At the time,
Owen Wilson
goes to Paris. He's engaged to Rachel McAdams, but he's incredibly bored. He's an English teacher, but wants to write novels. And he misses the good old days. He's very nostalgic.
Bored.
Yeah. I just want to do this. Wow. And he finds his fiancée, his family, who are there, incredibly rich and stifling. And he dreams about the old days, and eventually he wanders off just to walk through Paris late at night, and he stumbles across a bar, and what do you know, he's actually in the 1920s, and he hangs out with Zelda Fitzgerald and F. Scott Fitzgerald and Ernest Hemingway and Gertrude Stein, and he hangs out with all the literary figures and his heroes in the 1920s. Funny enough, so Tom Hiddleston is in that, and he plays F. Scott Fitzgerald, and it's like 10 years later, those guys would be again together in Low-Key, but Tom Hiddleston is the lead role, and Owen Wilson is the supporting actor. I just find that great. In the space of 10 years, different careers.
Yes.
Here's why I think you've missed the boat with it. Obviously, a lot of stuff has changed with Woody Allen, but
Sure.
When I rewatched it in 2020, I was struck by how just awfully written the only 3 female characters are. Okay,
Did it pass the Bechdel test?
No, it does not. Rachel McAdams is so annoying and naggy and cliched as a fiance.
Really?
Hey, why don't you do this? Hey, why don't you do that? Hey, why don't you do that? That I'm
Why is he too much of a home?
completely irredeemable. Her mother is overbearing. Why are you marrying this guy? He's so useless. Why are you marrying him? I'm just trying to be. Yeah, okay. And then, of course, you have this sexy French. Marion Cotillard comes along and plays the. So you have like complete sex bomb, or complete naggy
Nagging
woman.
wife at
There's
home.
no actual woman in it who is a 3-dimensional human being, which is really a real shame. And also. There's some sort of action in the plot that makes Rachel McAdams just almost like nasty. I think it's actually incredibly pretentious that, this idea of going back to the 1920s. It's true. Nostalgia has been a massive boom in the industry for the past 10 years. So it was kind of ahead of the curve with that. But also like this is very much your fancy, Woody. I don't know many other people who want to escape to the 1920s. And there's a time when you sort of go, I don't actually know who that person is, but like, Woody Allen does, after a while you'd be like, oh, he's almost like nudging the audience being like, hey, it's thingy. And you'd be like, I don't know because I'm not a scholar of turn of the century Paris. But it is very beautifully shot and it is very warm.
Fantasy film.
Complete male fantasy film, but not a complete waste of time. Not a complete waste of time. Amusing enough, good enough music.
Is it worth watching for educational reasons with that cynical eye or not really?
I think there's interesting stuff in it. I think there's a line in it that's always stayed with me, where Owen Wilson says something about Paris. He's like, Paris as a city is like a work of art. The Paris as one whole city, from its buildings and its architecture and the way it's planned, the way it's laid out, and its culture and everything, is the work of art in itself. No other art form. What other art form can express Paris like that? And something about that's always kind of stayed with me. There's a huge cast. Martin Sheen's, Michael Sheen is in it. Léa Seydoux. Quickly, Adrian Brody turns up as Salvador Dali. I think kind of an amusing thing. Yeah. And then there's Toulouse-Lautrec and stuff. So if you're going to watch it, it's not a complete waste of time. But I do think you'll think, ooh, this is a bit ropey.
Right. Okay.
This is ropey. Okay, James, we've got 3 films left.
I've got no idea what's in them.
Okay, I'm going to give you a clue about the next one.
Okay.
I've not seen it.
Yeah.
Spielberg.
Oh, 2000. Bridge of Spies?
No, that's 2015.
2015.
Earlier.
Warhorse.
Yes.
Not seen Warhorse.
Okay.
You know what? I lie. I watched 20 minutes of Warhorse on TV. There was a scene that I couldn't watch it. It was too harsh. I literally was like breaking my heart. I was like, I can't do it anymore.
Well, because of cruelty and
the horses, I just couldn't see it. But I was like, this is very good. And I've heard Tom Hiddleston talk really great, really wonderfully about the process of doing that film with Spielberg and how great the direction was. But I've not seen it.
So it's based on the Michael Morpurgo book,
Play,
and the play, and the story of World War One. Boy, country boy, horse, both go to blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Classic Spielberg things of like rich sunsets, emotional turmoil, war is awful, but don't you want to just come home and see your mama? I've not seen it either, so really we can't comment on it. I don't think it's been forgotten because Warhorse is still a massive thing.
Did it do well?
I think it was well enough received. I don't think it's been as well received as the theatre show, which is related. Well, have you seen the theatre show?
No.
I mean, I did, and I loved it.
Yeah.
And I had a bit like you with like you almost couldn't handle it. I had a real emotional.
And they have just puppets essentially,
crisis.
which is even
Yeah.
the fact they can do that with puppets on stage is quite powerful.
You should have seen me at the end of Act 1. That's what I'm saying.
Really? Were you in bits?
I couldn't talk.
So this is the thing. I started watching.
Yeah.
I was like, so you know that thing where when you sound really stupid when you have babies, like when everyone tells you like the idea of your children being hurt, you're like, oh, I just can't think about that.
Yeah.
I have that with my dogs and animals being hurt on screen, and horses are like dogs. So when I saw the horses, I was like, oh, my dogs, I can't do it. I'm not watching it. I can't do it. I can watch people be murdered, and I'm like, person, right?
Yeah.
Dogs. If the dog dies, I give it a bad mark.
Oh yeah.
I give films bad marks for killing the dog.
Can't kill the
I don't
dog.
care.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's fine.
And that's why I couldn't watch Warhorse.
So that's Warhorse. Okay.
It's like one of those songs like, I could go back to, but I don't know in what environment.
I think it's like
I'm
mid.
gonna watch
It's
Warhorse.
probably like mid to slightly mid-low level Spielberg.
Is it long?
It's probably. I bet it
Is it
looks
on
a
the
bit
way
of
to
a.
3 hours?
It looks like a 2.5-er.
Yeah.
Okay. 2 more left. Okay. The next film is by someone who is directed by someone who's of equal importance. Is of equal stature.
Yeah.
As Spielberg.
Okay.
Okay. Martin Scorsese.
Okay. 2012 Scorsese. So not past, that was like 2006. So further on would be. I can't think of what it would have been. Go on.
It's not a typical Scorsese film. It's not violent. No one gets called a melon farmer, if you know what I mean.
Can't remember.
No one gets whacked. No one throws Martin Sheen off a building.
Scorsese 2012.
Children. It's set in the same place where Woody Allen's film was set.
Paris.
Children. Paris. And a bit like The Artist, it's also about the origin of cinema.
Oh God, Hugo.
That's it.
Oh,
Well done.
Hated it. I remember seeing it. I don't know if I hated it. I remember being bored by it.
When did you see it?
In cinema. God, again, I've forgotten about that. That you're right. That is. It's got. What's his name?
Chloe Grace Moretz and the boy is. Isn't it Cody Smith McPhee?
No, it's not Cody Smith McPhee.
Asa Butterfield.
Asa Butterfield, and who's the guy who played? He's also played Gandhi. What's his
Ben
name?
Kingsley.
Ben Kingsley. Thank you. Sorry, I don't know. If
Yes,
Ben Kingsley
as Lumiere.
yes.
Georges Lumiere, I think.
Oh
yeah.
God, I think I was in a really wrong mood. I don't remember if it's good, but I didn't like it in the cinema.
Right.
I remember not liking it.
That's the thing about Hugo. I've only seen it once as well.
I remember nothing about it apart from it's about the beginning of film.
Well, tellingly, I saw it only once, and it was on my film studies course at uni. Right.
Okay.
Yeah, like it's interesting if you're really into cinema to be like, oh, okay.
You weren't at uni. Oh, you watched it. Sorry.
It was
After
part
came
of the course.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
But not when it came out.
No, not when it came out. And Scorsese clearly has a massive love for that. Scorsese, great filmmaker, loves the story he's telling and loves the period. So all that stuff makes it watchable, but it's very CG.
Yeah, I
Very
remember
flat.
a lot of it.
But it's also a bit like it's the equivalent of your grandpa coming in, sitting down on the floor with you and trying to play with your toys. Kind of sweet at first, but after a while it's like, okay, Gramps, could you leave the sweet stuff to me? You're kind of creeping me out here.
Yeah. That's actually quite a good description.
Thank you. Not that I wouldn't want to hang out with Martin Scorsese. So, yeah, Hugo. I think people had the same reaction, which is kind of like
Another film that you don't hear a lot of or see a lot of.
I think a lot of people went to see that and came out and thought, I didn't get any of that. Because all the film stuff would have just gone over there.
Because I remember the poster. It looks like
he's hanging off a clock.
He's hanging off the clock. Is it King's Cross?
No, it's in France.
Oh, sorry,
it's in.
France. I have no idea what I'm talking. I really don't remember.
But
it kind of looks like very like
Gare.
kiddie. Like this is a kids' film. Like it looked like the Polar Express.
Oh
the
yeah,
cover.
It has got a kind of disposable rubbery.
Yeah, CG, but
It's Martin Scorsese's Polar Express. I never thought about that.
Hugo Sparks. Have you watched any clips of the Polar Express with Tom Hanks?
I saw it in cinema.
I saw it in cinema too.
I have
you
watched it.
watched.
Oh, yeah.
Have you seen it recently?
It looks like a screensaver.
That is like the reference that people use for like the digital uncanny valley,
Yes, totally.
which you use where you went too far with the realism, and it actually video games have to do this all the time, where the technology is so good we can make faces as real as we can,
but it
but
creep
you
you
actually
out.
want to hold back a little bit because it looks creepy and it just looks off.
Yeah.
And God, the kids' faces in that just look really quite terrifying.
Yeah. It's and also just so like it's creepy also because it's so dated from like 2005.
You can tell like they haven't figured out how to like capture the weight of someone as they move, because there probably was pre-motion capture where you would actually like track movements, and it's like everyone floats around. All right. Sorry, I once got in real trouble because I was staying in a hotel, and when you can rent films off the TV in a hotel back in the day?
Yeah.
I rented the Polar Express, thought it was very average when I was young, and I accidentally rented it again, so I paid for it twice. And my dad was really mad because it was like really expensive. He's like, "Why have you done that? You've rented this film twice. I now have to pay for it twice." Right? You sit here and you watch it. And you watch the film again.
He made you watch it?
I don't think he like forced me to, but I remember like feeling so guilty that I just sat there and watched the Polar Express again. Which
Terrible.
probably has ruined my impression of it. My dad was like, "You sit here and you watch it again."
Oh man. All right. Do you want your last film?
Yeah.
Okay. We've been talking about the era for a while.
Yes.
That year. Do you think you could name what this
I'm
film
gonna go
is?
for a guess. Because this could be within a 3-year radius of 2012. It's a film I haven't seen, because I remember it being a nominated film I haven't seen. Is it The Help?
Absolutely right. Well done. I
it?
just knew you were going to get it right.
Viola Davis.
Yeah, Viola Davis And also, if you weren't going to get it, I was going to say Jessica Chastain and Bryce Dallas Howard in the same film, which is confusing.
I don't remember this film. I know I haven't seen it, but...
Well, I only saw it until, I think, last year for the first time.
Okay.
Really. Here's the thing about The Help. So, based on a book, and it's about... I can't remember what part of the American South it is set in, but it's obviously about... the house help in I want to say 50s, maybe early 60s America. I'm probably doing this, the story a massive disservice.
I'm really proud of myself for guessing that.
Well done. I'm proud. And there are lots of, plots running concurrently to each other, and it's kind of an ensemble thing, but essentially it focuses around interviews that Emma Stone's character does, who's a journalist, with The Help.
Yep.
In the first being Viola Davis, and then also Octavia Spencer.
Love Octavia Spencer.
And this was her. I think she won for this. I think she won the Oscar for it. And they're both great at it. I mean, they're all great in it. The cast is great. Viola Davis is wonderful, and everything would go on to get nominated for other stuff. Emma Stone, wonderful. I mean, the thing to say about The Help is this: is that I had lots of people recommend that to me. And
it's not as far away as 10 years ago, but here we are. Yeah.
I think it's interesting watching it how much has changed even in 10 years about how you make a film like that.
Right.
When I watched it, I was just acutely aware not only of the conversation about white saviordom and all that, but it was more that
What, you didn't like the Blind Side with Sandra Bullock?
I'd never seen it.
Oh,
that's
in
my Blind Side.
Yeah, that and Freedom Writers.
Yeah. I that film, The Help, increasingly, obviously you can tell from looking at it, racism is bad. We don't need to, that's obvious. And the whole point of this film is explaining, how that manifests. But that film makes so many concessions to its white audience that by the end, I found it quite frustrating. I mean, and here's what I mean by that. So instead of examining how racism manifests in a white population at different scales, casual racism here and a more forthright racism there, and also why somebody who can appear friendly and polite would hold those views in that contemporary time in the 1950s. What it actually does is bundle all of the really nasty, ugly racism into one character, which is Bryce Dallas Howard's character, which over the course of the film they make increasingly grotesque. There's not that you won't get this, but there's a bit in it with Octavia Spencer's character, which is really crude. It's meant to be funny, but it's just that's another thing. It's just this kind of grotesque character. And at the beginning of it, you think, oh yeah, here's this milieu of white characters, and all of them are racist in their different ways. But all of them throughout the film slowly get let off the hook. So Sissy Spacek plays Bryce Dallas Howard's mum, and even she says something at some point I don't believe in that. I don't stand up for that. That I don't think a person or that character would have said. But all that is doing is making a concession for its white audience. And what I mean by that is, the film is it's knowing that it wants to appeal as an Oscar film to a broad audience.
Yeah.
And it's we don't want to upset the white audience too much. We really don't want to do that. There's a bit increasingly towards the film, Emma Stone is the lead character, and even though this film is really, really about Viola Davis and Octavia Spencer's character and all the women, Emma Stone is made to be the protagonist. And there's a scene, I can't say what it is. Actually, you know what? I think I can say what it is because it's been 10 years, guys. At the end, Emma Stone goes off she gets a journalism degree because these articles are done so well.
Yeah,
but Viola Davis and Octavia Spencer, their characters are left stuck. Their situation has not changed. Their situation has not improved. But there's the way it's shot is kind of that's great for Emma Stone. And they're don't worry, Emma Stone, it'll be fine. And I'm Emma Stone almost shouldn't be in this film.
Yeah.
And it should be about Viola Davis and Octavia Spencer. And also, Emma Stone as a white character would be much more conflicted. Her family are very repugnant, repulsive with their attitudes, particularly her mother, Alison Janney. But Emma Stone is not, does not espouse any of that. And what I'm essentially trying to say is the issue of racism in the 1950s and the way that is represented on screen is so much more complex, than this cookie cutter, black and white, no pun intended, depiction allows.
It's interesting you talk about that sort of phenomenon about sort of making films for white people. I remember an interview that would have been the following year, Steve McQueen talking about 12 Years a Slave and the Oscar buzz did that win Best Picture? Yeah, which won Best Picture in the end. And someone in an interview, I remember he got really pissed off because someone who hadn't seen this film yet talked about I think like this kind of thing, and he said, "Oh, do you think maybe you're making your films for white people?" Steve McQueen got really pissed off. He's if you didn't know, he's black himself, British black filmmaker, and he basically got really pissed off and was like, how dare you? Like, I do not make films for white people. I'm literally taking a book which I read, which was an untold story by a guy named Solomon Northup, and I told that story in the most like accurate, compelling way I think when you watch that film, you don't get any sense that it's pandering to any kind of character for a specific like angle. It's equally cynical of a lot of characters, but obviously like that film goes on to have the success it does. But that idea of making films for a white audience to get an award attention. Yeah,
and but it's one thing to, you know, obviously you want to. A film wants to play to, you know, a film wants to be seen. That's fine, you know, that's great. But it's a shame when the commercial attempt to appeal to an audience bends the actual and dilutes and blunts the actual message and way that the story is told, which is really disappointing. So there you are. Those are the films that came out.
What a journey.
Those are the Oscars of 2012. If you had to pick one to rewatch or watch.
Quickly run through them again, just remind me.
Okay. The Artist, The Descendants, Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close, Moneyball, Midnight in Paris, War Horse, The Tree of Life, Hugo, The Help. Are you going to rewatch or are you going to watch for the first time?
I think, do you know what? I would watch War Horse.
Yeah.
Just because I think it would be good. And I don't think it would have aged out, which I think, funnily enough, a lot of the films, there were a couple of films on there you think, I enjoyed it at the time, but looking back on it, you might just go, for a couple of the scenes. I think War Horse would be a difficult watch for the reasons we said, but I think I would have a lot to gain from watching it, and I'm sure it's very well made because it's a Spielberg film.
You can't go wrong trying to be a Spielberg completist, can you? You know, and if it's good, even if it's bad Spielberg, you're like, well, he's made so many other good ones, you know, it just fills in the picture for me.
What about you? Would you do Tree of Life? Would you want to go do, if a cinema released Tree of Life, would you just jump on that?
I would love to see that film on the big screen. I'd absolutely love to. I'd love to go see that. And I think that would be my first choice. But I'm just trying to think of a second one because, like, I went out and bought, like, the Criterion of Tree of Life. So, like, I'm already a signed, paid-up member to rewatch that again. And maybe I might not like it second time round. Maybe just the shock and the experience the first time was where it was at. So, I think if I was to... I've seen all of those films except for War Horse and Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close. And I think I would probably go and watch Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close just to see what that film was like. And even if it's just a relic of that time, maybe I'll watch it and I'll just think, yep, this existed solely for the awards season in 2011, 2012. And
out of sheer curiosity to be like, what was going on
like,
here?
I know War Horse, the story. You know, I've seen, you know, So I think I'd do that, and if not, I'd probably rewatch Moneyball.
Yeah, maybe that'd be a good shout.
Those are the films that were, and maybe in 20 years' time we'll do it again.
Yeah, oh my God.
Maybe we should do 2002.
Maybe we should have got,
1992.
We should pick random years and just attack the other person with the films and see how they've aged.
You, sir, sound like you're doing a podcast. That's a great idea.
Sounds like a podcast segment for a few years' time. Thank you so much for watching and listening to this episode of Pulp Kitchen. Don't forget, we post a new episode of this show every single Wednesday.
And we've got plenty more content coming on the channel throughout the week, so keep an eye out for that when you're listening or watching.
There'll be more reviews that we don't include in here, so it'll be on all the feeds, on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. Follow us there. If you're watching, please drop us a like and subscribe. It makes a really big difference. And if you're listening, leave us a review.
See you next week.
Oh!